Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Barrens Chat podcast. I'm Sod, and with me tonight is my co-host Guck. This is a podcast about World of Warcraft by two guys who play it. Guck, huge news dropped today. A corruption vendor coming into retail WoW, which is excellent if you're still playing retail WoW. Some might say it's too little, too late. I hate to agree with them, although I am excited for this. You had a pretty successful week in Classic. How did it go?
Yeah, a lot of cool stuff on Classic, so we'll start with this and just kind of get it out of the way because, like you mentioned, the corruption vendor is going to be a fairly monumental aspect of the 8.3 system. But yeah, so focusing on Classic, I finally got an item that allows me to play the meta for warriors, so it's a weapon skill glove. Most people are looking for the Edge Masters, which give you weapon skill in swords, daggers, and axes. It's not that. I got Aged Core Leather, which just allows me to essentially be an orc, but with daggers. So I'm excited to deal with that. I mean, I'll have fast attacks, a lot of DPS, but again, with that, it'll be a lot of threat. Our tanks have been pretty bad on the threat department, so it'll be tough to kind of manage how hard I'm pushing with how hard they can hold threat. But again, I mean, if you guys are in on Classic, you've probably seen the recent Apes speedrun clears of BWL, and they are clearing BWL now that they actually have several weeks of BWL resets. They're clearing it in almost sub 20 minutes. So this involves just an immense amount of stacked warriors stacked with their bis. They're flying through boss fights. They're skipping trash when possible. It's pretty incredible stuff. But the one thing that stands out the most is the fact that their tanks never drop threat, and their DPS are absolute monsters. So you have to wonder, like, what do they know that the rest of the tanks in the game don't know? And thankfully, due to logs, you can just kind of pull these players up, look at their logs, see exactly what they're doing. And hopefully this week we'll have our tanks try to emulate that, but we'll see. There's something about tanking where you just kind of start doing it and you get very rigid and you're not open to changing it. It was a weird thing that happened to me that I had to check and acknowledge during Legion. You feel elevated to a false sense of superiority where you're like, my way is the way that it needs to happen, and the tanks, the tanks are always right and the DPS are always wrong. It's a weird dynamic that in Classic is certainly, it gets played up a lot in Classic. But yeah, besides that, I'm having a good time in Classic, but a lot of people are dealing with the new trolling meta. And Sod, I don't think you've heard about this because you've been kind of out of Classic, but the new trolling meta has nothing to do with the opposite faction. It's someone in your own faction waiting in typically the pre-raid staging area. So for us on Horde side, that's going to be the Kargath Inn, where most raiders have their Hearthstone set. The meta for trolling now is priests waiting and just immediately dispelling your world buffs as soon as they find you.
Oh my god.
So now it's the horde that you have to worry about trolling you, because your 2-hour Dragon Slayer buff, your 1-hour Rend, your 1-hour Songflower, they are waiting there all day, doing nothing else in the game, but trying to dispel your world buffs before raid.
That has to be one of the most tilting feelings I think you could ever have, right? You think you're going to go in, have a successful night, parse well, like maybe you're trialing, you can prove yourself, and you go in all buffed up, ready to go. You're just, all your hopes and dreams are just halted. I mean, like, it's not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things, right? Like, you're probably still going to kill the bosses, but like, as far as like having a raid, like a good raid night and like good output on your character, that's terrible. That's brutal. I had no idea where you were gonna go with this when you told me about it, and that would infuriate me. I mean, I guess kudos to those priests that are Horde. I mean, I would imagine that would probably give you a bad rap on the server forums, so that maybe you'd have a hard time finding a guild to raid with. But I mean, who knows? Maybe if you don't like one of the guilds, or another guild's been poaching your guys. Maybe they're gonna make your raid night miserable, right? I mean, things like that could happen. I guess it's like kind of like the Jersey Shore down there in Kargath.
The funny thing is, you're right on the money with this. On our server, Crom Crush, we have more or less. It's a somewhat active server Discord. It's mostly there just so that people can organize Onyxia head, Nefarian head, Rend head buffs. But the people who get dispelled will be so pissed off that they find the name, they find the guild of whoever did it, and they post that incessantly on the Discord to the point where now we know there are a few guilds that not only tolerate this behavior, but they seem to endorse it. There's a lot of people in different guilds that are just repeat offenders, and people are just like, this is the troll guild on our server. And I have to wonder, is this people that rolled Alliance initially? They hated their experience in Phase 2, so they re-roll a Horde character Priest simply to do this once it comes to be raid time? I can only see that being one of the main incentives, aside from purely trolling for the lulz. And I doubt these are people that are streaming it, that are farming it for content. I think this is just like pure deranged trolling mentality for the sake of doing it. And it sucks. Like, the only way that you can delineate yourself from those top parses is your world buffs. And I mean, that's the biggest problem with Classic, is that your parse is not related to your skill whatsoever. The skill is, in some cases, if you're a mage, you just spam one key. If you're a warlock, you spam one key. There's no skill in your rotation. It's basically how skilled were you in gearing your character and how prepared were you in buffs and consumables. So when that's the only thing that determines your parse and you care about parsing, it's going to be a bad raid if you get dispelled in Kargath.
That's like, I can't imagine a guild endorsing that is like moderately serious about doing any sort of progression, because with AQ40 coming out, like, do you really want to have that reputation and that target on your back? So when everybody goes to what is Cenarian Hold in Silithus to like go into a raid, that's, probably going to be easy for like the cutting edge of guilds in Classic, but like a lot of guilds are going to struggle early on in there. There's mechanics that can be tough. Like, do you want that target on your back where your players are just going to get dispelled while they're running? I don't know. It doesn't seem smart.
If you need to replace raiders, and this guild particularly, I know if they ever have an idea that they're going to raid AQ and they need to fill a 40 or they need to replace people in their 40, people won't join if they're people from the Discord, which are the people that you kind of want raiding with you, because the Discord is largely just there to organize world buffs, and you want the most buffed raiders if you want to move quickly. So it is managed by that social currency that only exists in Classic, but because world buffs is essentially everything when it comes to your performance on parses, it's just like such a kick in the nuts when you get dispelled. I'm so lucky that I haven't gotten dispelled yet, but it's gotten to the point where the paranoia of getting dispelled affects me, where I just don't want to use my Hearthstone if I'm buffed. I have to find the Flightmaster, waste a few minutes of my buff by flying to Org instead of, hearthing from Felwood to Kargath and then, getting a mage port out of Kargath. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's terrible. I would, not detrimental to your raid, but definitely a day wrecker, is, I would say. That's rough. But in lighter news, Corruption Vendor is coming into retail. This is
huge.
This is huge. So it is too little too late. Like, let me say that real quick before I get into it. But if you're somebody who's still playing retail, who is still doing any sort of progression rating, and your guild is thinking like, oh, how are we going to keep this, active and going? Maybe you're going to try to do like Mythic Battle for Dazar'alor runs, like, random things like that to keep your guild into it and like mixing it up and keeping it different. This is huge. So my guild is thinking about hitting Mythic Nyalotha probably in like a couple weeks. Like, we're close. We have a close to 20-man roster of like, decent players. They're pretty good. And this is huge. Like, we all kind of speculated that this was coming, and now you get to hand pick your corruption. So like something that's handicapped. I actually poach. I didn't poach him, but one of your raiders that was raiding with you in Classic is now raiding with me in retail and no longer going to your Classic raids. But he was struggling to get the correct corruption, and now this vendor is going to completely change that, and you should see DPS numbers of your raid of like your friends in Mythic Plus and Arena, like everything, like the numbers are going to skyrocket because you can get that biz corruption that is going to cause you to do an astronomical amount of damage. Obviously, the procs are random depending on which corruption you pick. You could always go with the stat increase, which is always going to be just a general DPS increase. But if you're taking Twilight Devastation as a tank, or maybe you want Infinite Stars, or maybe you're running Gushing Wounds. I mean, these are all things that are, really good corruptions. And if you want to gamble and maybe get some lucky procs, you can totally shred a boss. Like, I'm so pumped for this. I don't know if it's going to be out tomorrow. It says in the post that it'll be rolled out this week. I do have some complaints about how it's being rolled out, but it's going to be so awesome. I can't wait to raid it. It probably, maybe not this week, but like next week when you see all the corruption start to come in and just your players just start pumping DPS, like how fast these bosses are going to die, how fast can we clear heroic, and what it's going to mean for us in mythic progression. I don't think it's going to make us a cutting edge guild by any means, but we might kill an extra 2 to 3 bosses in Mythic because of it, which I think will be awesome.
There's a lot to unpack there. Just to touch on your last point, I think that is a good thing that players now have the agency to get it, but also think about how bad of a system this was on release if simply having the ability to hand pick your corruption will just artificially give you guys more progression, right? It's basically saying that corruption is so strong, or at least so imbalanced to the point where some corruption is immensely strong, that by simply giving your raiders that corruption, you get more bosses down, right? You would want to think that the gearing system that's in place has, it augments your play style, but ultimately the way you play and how you're using your character, that should be what determines if you guys can truly progress. But I mean, that's neither here nor there. A few things that this really screams to me. One, this is a callback to the end of Legion, where, and I would say the legendary system was arguably one of the worst parts of Legion because of how random it was. It was, again, like we've mentioned, too little, too late. Or maybe just enough, but still too late. And that too late add-on is what makes it unpalatable. For most people who are still playing since 8.3 launched, they've probably already got the corruption that they need. Maybe the people who are unlucky, they don't have the specific ones, and this is great for them. But thinking back to Legion, in Legion, I guess it was a little bit worse and amplified because the legendaries were throughout the entire expansion. It wasn't something that came in a 7.3, but by the time the legendary vendor was out, the people who didn't have the right legendaries that they needed for their best in slot had long gone. They had long left raiding, PvP, Mythic Plus, whatever they were into, and by the time the legendary currency was introduced, it was like more of seen as a alt system, where now if you've been playing, you can get an alt that can also go and buy some of these legendaries and then continue playing the game. It didn't really revitalize the population. It didn't bring a bunch of people back in. And I'm fairly certain that we're going to see the same effect here in 8.3, where it's not going to really get a bunch of new people in, but the people who are still consistently playing will really benefit from this system. And aside from that, I think this is a good step because it balances corruption without necessarily balancing it. Obviously, this doesn't change any of those broken corruption side effects, like you mentioned, the stars, the void, the gushing wounds. Those are all going to do the same thing, but by allowing players to select those overpowered corruptions, it kind of balances it out because now everyone has access to the strongest option and will artificially balance themselves because everyone will have it. And once everyone has it, then you can say, oh, well, corruption is balanced. We're all dealing the same percentage of damage thanks to our corruption, save for the RNG related to the proc rate. So it's good. It's a great thing. It helps the people who are playing. It reduces the impact of how unbalanced the system is. But will it shift the needle as far as population goes? I don't think so. I think in some aspects, maybe the reduction to how slow getting your cape leveled up, I think that might have some tangible effects in getting people back in, because I personally do not want to do daily quests and assaults and things like that just to get my cloak up, just to use corruption, just to buy specific corruptions. Like, it's too much homework.
Well, not only that, too, they're making it so when you upgrade your cloak, like right now, I'm trying to go from 14 to 15, and I need 4 runs to do that. They're reducing it, so to upgrade your cloak, you only need 1 run for every rank. So, like, you still have to complete the objectives you need to complete, but you can do that in 1 run. So, theoretically, if you're good enough, if you're geared enough, in 14 runs, you can go from rank 1 to rank 15, or 15 runs. Maybe I'm an idiot, but it that's doable. That's totally feasible, and I think that's cool. And it helps you catch your alts up, which is great. And like you said too, the Legion legendary system, like that vendor, like I didn't take advantage of that. You didn't take advantage of that. Like maybe I got a couple legendaries and a couple of alts that I wouldn't have got otherwise, but other than that, I wasn't doing Legion content to take advantage of that because of when it was released in Legion, and it definitely is one of those things where it's like too little, too late. Fortunately for me, I am in a place right now where like I'm doing content in WoW and in retail, and I'm enjoying it, and it will help me catch up. It'll help, all those guys that recently joined me catch up and fill out their corruption, really like min-max their character, and just see where we can take it. And another thing, just to piggyback on what you said too, corruption. So I don't have best in slot corruption on my hunter right now, but I do have rank 5 mind flay, and when I am doing well in DPS, it's my top damage. So like you're right, it is like kind of a bummer to see like this random thing that may or may not proc be your top damage. Like that isn't really riveting or good gameplay. I think that Blizzard recognizes that, and hopefully we don't take that into Shadowlands with us. It doesn't seem like we're going to have a lot of RNG stuff in there, so we at least have that to look forward to. And, right now I'm just going to try to go through, BFA and play as many classes as I can and try to, I don't know, min-max and see what I want to play in Shadowlands. Like right now, the sky's the limit. It's cool for me right now just because of all the possibilities, and I'm close to Keystone Master, so this will help me finish it off on those tough dungeons. And I'm just excited about it. Like there's a lot to be excited for, especially with the cloak upgrades on like the alts I've been playing. And the only negative thing that I have to say about it, other than it being too late. So Echoes of Nyalotha is a currency that's used to unlock a specific corruption for a piece. Echoes of Nyalotha is a currency that you get from if you have rank 3 essences on a character, you get echoes on your alt. So a lot of people that had all the rank 3 essences unlocked on their main character, you cannot earn Echoes of Nyalotha on that character. So where I'm at right now, and where actually a lot of people are at on the forums, is they have characters that they can't earn Echoes of Nyalotha on, and so they don't have any right now. Whereas I was talking to one of my friends today, he has 20,000. So I have 200 on my character because I cannot earn anymore. Despite the fact that I do the World Quest emissaries and stuff like that every day. You get them from there. I do the assaults when they're up. I do my horrific visions. I do arena a little bit. I do mythic plus. So I do content where you earn Echoes of Nyalotha, and I don't get them. And he has 20,000. So he is at a significant advantage of me over me going into the new system that's coming out. They haven't specified whether they're going to do a reset on Echoes of Nyalotha that people have earned. It hasn't been said. They are going to increase like how you earn them, which is good. But kind of unfortunate for me going into this week, and a lot of other people too. Just from reading the forums, it's kind of a hot topic right now.
I'm gonna think. So this is how Blizzard has done stuff like this in the past. They will never eliminate the currency that you have, but something that they will do is they will release a new system that uses that currency and just hilariously inflate the price. But then also, once that system goes live, they hilariously inflate the rewards that would yield that resource. So, like, sure, right now, your buddy has 2,000 while you have 200. But let's just say the week that they implement this, the item that you need costs 20,000, but it's fine because every time you get awarded this currency, you get 7,000, 8,000, 9,000. Right? They can essentially give people who have stockpiled it, maybe half of a corrupted item for free, or maybe one corrupted item for free. But if they inflate the currency, which they can do, there's no problem with that. If they inflate the rewards and inflate the prices, that kind of brings everyone to a more or less equal playing field without making people subconsciously feel ripped off. So I think if that is something that Blizzard thinks is a problem, they could approach the system like that. They've done it in the past with Residuum. Every time in BFA when we got a new raid and it increased the eye level of your Azerite gear, they inflated the Titanic Residuum or whatever it was called. So this is something that could benefit from that same adjustment.
Yes, 100%. I could not agree more. They are inflating it. The prices of the rank 3 essences are going up. You can use echoes to enter horrific visions. So they're going to inflate it. They're also inflating the amount that you're going to get per assault that you do, and it's going to be random. So there is a little more RNG in there. And another thing that we haven't hit on is, like, you and I both watched that Preach video when he mentioned all the RNG going on in a raid encounter, right? Based on, is this corruption going to proc here? You have like so on and so forth, and it causing lag. I'm curious to see, with all the corruption that's going to be coming out over the next couple of weeks, how much people are going to be lagging in these encounters, because I've definitely noticed it a little bit, and I think that could end up being a huge problem for a lot of people if the servers aren't stable.
The last thing that I have an issue with still is I believe that if they're doing something with corruption, they should also do an element of catch up for that, and I forget what it's called, the research table that's inside the heart of Azeroth that you use to make your horrific visions better, like whatever that tech tree is called. That needs to be given a catch-up mechanic as well, because that's something that, like, it's more or less time-gated. It's locked behind how many vessels you can get and how many runs that you can complete and how much currency you get from those runs. So I there's another thing I would like to see them change, but I'm personally, I don't think a systemic change will bring me back to the game. I think what will bring me back to the game is the 9.0 pre-patch. I know I'm going to be there for that. I'm reluctant, and I've mentioned this before on other episodes, I'm reluctant to even level a toon because the leveling system is going to be fully reworked and probably much better at the same speed in Shadowlands as it is now in BFA with the 100% buff. I know Bellular has mentioned certain hour statistics about how long it's taking people to do the 1 through 50 content, which would be the 1 to 120 content we have right now in BFA. And it's just not, it's not something that gets me. I, right now, have spent so much more time doing other games. I think taking a break from WoW in general is on the horizon for me, just to kind of prime the pump for Shadowlands. Because once the pre-patch is on the horizon after this, I want to go hard. I want to fall back in love with retail WoW. I want to experience the new stuff they have planned. I want to do the same thing repetitively on different characters just to have multiple characters set up going into 9.0. So I want all of these things. I want WoW to be great. And sometimes I think it might take pulling back a little bit. Like I've been playing a lot of Bannerlord. I'm playing a lot of Steam games, and that to me, I believe will help me get into WoW once we get Shadowlands content.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. I'm just still so into WoW right now. Like, fortunately, I have a really good community that I'm playing with, and it just seems to keep growing. Like, I had, like probably a month ago, I had like 5 guys I was doing keys with, and that 5 guys turned into joining a guild, and now like our core of people that I do keys with is probably up to like 10 or 11. So it's like it's just cool to log in and say, "Hey, I want to do this. Hey, I want to do that." And like if I want to play an alt, I could just say, "Hey, do you guys mind if I just do one key on this character like this week so I can get a Mythic Plus cache and like be more prepared next week if I want to enter Horrific Visions or anything like that." So I really appreciate that. And while right now, unfortunately, I have a good community, and like as long as I have a community that I'm playing with, I'll be playing retail and I'll like enjoying it. I honestly have not played another game in like 3 weeks. I've only played WoW and retail WoW at that, which is nuts because I'm probably gonna burn myself out at some point. But like I am loving it.
Yeah, to each his own. I think if you're and you are genuinely enjoying it because of the intangibles, the community aspect, the group aspect, the stuff that you get from running, Mythic Plus in your group and going through timers and all that stuff is totally legit. And I don't think you can ever really burn out on those intangibles. I think, sure, like you can burn out on the systems within it, but I mean, I think both strategies that we're taking will yield very similar results once 9.0 comes out. I think we're both going to go in excited with open minds, ready to enjoy it, ready to, find the critiques that are there. But yeah, I don't see any issues with that either way.
Yeah, and also too, like we didn't really hit on like Shadowlands, what's coming up. Guck and I still do not have alpha, so if anybody from Blizzard is listening, you can reach us at baronschatpod@gmail.com. We would love to test that game. Ouroboros is supposed to come out soon. We got a little teaser. It's I think within a week. Don't quote me on that. It could be false info, but really excited to see what the city has to offer, like how it's going to look, how big is it going to be, is everything going to be accessible? Dazarlor was a complete nightmare. A lot of people on Alliance really like Barrens and like the ease of access, so we'll see how that goes. I'm excited to see the city. I'm excited to see Ardenweald as well. I think that might be the next zone, if I'm not mistaken, and just really, really pumped to see like the visual aesthetics that the new zone and new city have to offer in Shadowlands.
Yeah. I remember doing a faction change on one of my characters to Alliance, and I found Borealis to be pretty confusing because, I mean, obviously it was my first time going there, but it was definitely compact. It was compartmentalized. And I can imagine if you had played the beginnings of that expansion through that city, you would find it very convenient. Like the scrapper being close to the quest givers, close to the professions peoples, close to, everything is close together. It's got its own little house, its own little area. Dazarlor definitely, I mean, it gave you that sense of, oh, this is an epic kingdom with this massive seal that sits in this temple, but you have to fly down to the dock for your mission table and the scrappers by the professions, and then you have to go inside the temple for the quest stuff. It was certainly a mess. So yeah, I'm excited to see how they end up designing the hub world for us in Shadowlands. Ardenwald, I think, is going to be one of my favorite aesthetic zones. Like there's going to be this massive tree in the center with like all these whirling elements that are, in one part of the skybox and other part actual kind of models in the game. I'm just really stoked to see it. I feel like aesthetically they knocked that zone out of the park. It's like a better Zangarmarsh. I'm very much excited to see that new zone. And I hope it's the next one. We've got that one or Maldraxxus, so I'm hoping it's Ardenweald next.
Yeah, I'm kind of like a weeb in that sense. Like, Ardenweald, I just hope doesn't end up like Val Shara, where it's like over cluttered with trees and just I didn't like that zone, and like typically I would like those like kind of foresty zones. Bastion so far to me looks like my favorite zone. It's like light and open and nice. Like Rivendreth looks nice, but I'm not really into the whole vampire thing. I know like everybody else that plays WoW is. It's like this weird thing that like all the cool people like.
It's the edgelords, bro. Edge.
Yeah, all the cool people like Revendreth, and that's just, I want the openness and the ease of access, and like, I don't want it to be a pain in the ass to navigate around, so like, it looks like Bastion will be my zone.
Last thing that I have kind of, the last thing that really kind of popped up on my radar for Shadowlands this week was a lot more content was data mined about the auto battler system that is very probable to come in to kind of either replace or augment the current mission table system. So there's a lot of different characters. Those characters are given specific moves and specific abilities that are very reminiscent of your teamfight tactics, your auto chess. I personally think that if they do this the right way, if they avoid making it overly necessary, because it is a game within a game, so it has to be fun and engaging to make people want to play it, but they can't force this to be the new Warfront, where it's something that just becomes a chore. People will hate it for the sake of hating it because of how annoying it is. Any mandatory content that they add in has to be solid. So I'm hoping, because they did a really good job, it seems, with the roguelike elements of Torghast, that they take a very serious kind of bottom-up approach to the auto-battler genre and do it justice in the mission table. I think that would be great. I kept an open mind about Torghast and was blown away. I'm keeping an open mind about the auto-battler, hoping to also be blown away, because right now, if you have the Champion Commander add-on, you just go to your mission table, you assign people based on the highest percentage possible, and then in 8 hours you collect your AP. And that's not even really content. That is a chore. That's kind of homework stuff. It's delineated down to an app that you can get on your phone and do it remotely. So I would be really excited to see something replace that system just because of how bad it is already, and to replace it with something that could be as good as Torghast in essence. I'm excited for it.
I will say this, given like how game modes have gone in the past with WoW, I will go in with zero expectations and expect it to be bad because of Warfronts and because of islands, and I feel like I won't enjoy it, and it is going to be a chore that I have to do. And, hopefully I'm wrong. Obviously, I want to like it. I want to enjoy the systems in the game, but I'm going in with no expectations whatsoever. I have seen like content that you said on that, and they can do it, so it's cool. I totally believe that. I need to see it to believe it, because I'm not convinced that they're going to pull it off.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people probably thought the same thing about Torghast, but then once we got content about Torghast and could see it, and we could see people playing it and enjoying it, it alleviated a lot of that kind of tension. Maybe we get some content, maybe we get to see it, but until then, I think, most people are going to stay pretty skeptical about it. Just because, we're coming off of Blizzard's like, hey guys, we're throwing in a new system. Weren't Warfronts cool? Weren't Islands cool? And, and if we had no video for Torghast, I would imagine people thinking just like, this is going to be a flop. This is going to be boring, but they're still going to make you do it to get necessary progression points. So, I'm hoping that we get some form of if they are going to implement an auto battler, I want to see it on the alpha. I want to see people playing it, because until that point, whether it's good or bad, it can't be adjusted until there's feedback. And if they just launch it without feedback, then that's going to be a problem.
Yes, and that's all I have to say today.
Yeah, I think that's it. Still pretty juicy stuff. We got something cool going on in retail with our new vendor. We've got something annoying going on in Classic with the way that we're being trolled. And as always, stuff to look forward to in Shadowlands. If you guys enjoyed the episode, please rate and review us on iTunes. Follow us on our website, barrenschat.podbean.com. You can tweet at us at barrenschatpod, and we will see you guys in the next one.